Damn it, guys. Damn it. You know, Sam Raimi was onto something here, but then the producers had to get involved, and then this happened. And the rest, as they say, is history. Guys, my name is Zach. Welcome to my channel where I love discussing all things geeky, all things cinema, all things entertainment in general. And I really do appreciate you guys clicking on this thumbnail today. I really hope you enjoy your stay because for f***'s sakes, we're looking at Spider-Man 3. Let's do this! Yeah, so this is an annoying one. Quite a bit, actually, because this movie was extremely hyped up out the wazoo. It should have been an instant classic just like its predecessors, but instead it is a gigantic clusterfuck. What's the premise? Well, Peter Parker and Mary Jane seem to finally be on the right track in their complicated relationship, but trouble starts looming for the superhero and his lover. See, Peter's supersuit turns black and takes control of him, not only giving Peter enhanced power, but also bringing out the dark side of his personality. And Peter must overcome the suit's influence as two supervillains, the Sandman and Venom, rise up to destroy him and all those he holds dear. And hey, did I mention Harry took over his father's mantle as the new Goblin and he wants to kill Peter now? And you're starting to see the big problem with this movie. There is just way too damn much going on. And if you guessed that Spider-Man 3 was one of the biggest theatrical disappointments of my childhood, you would be absolutely correct. I vividly remember leaving this theater back in 2007 when I was just 10 years old, and I was not only disappointed, but I left feeling a little bit empty after what I saw. But of course, I'm here to look at things objectively without any sort of bias, and that will require me to dig into some spoilers, so just in case you've never seen Spider-Man 3, the movie is 15 years old, so that's your fair heads up. But let me make two things perfectly clear before I start. Number one, the overcomplicated mess of a story that we got is not the fault of Sam Raimi whatsoever. He initially wrote this script only having two villains on his plate, Harry and the Sandman, which I think is perfect. Those are two of the more interesting aspects of this finished product. But you know what, guys? These producers were just way too damn impatient, and they were begging Sam Raimi to include Venom. And then they upped the ante by saying, hey, we're gonna have that guy from That 70s Show play the character. Isn't that great? But to be completely honest, guys, the number two thing that I want to get out of the way, there are parts of Spider-Man 3 that I really like. Even though this script is way too bloated and it's trying to squeeze in way too freaking much, there are parts that I think are good to great even. And I've really grown to appreciate these aspects over the years as I've rewatched this movie again. For example, a lot of people are going to be really surprised to hear me say this, but I was really digging Mary Jane's development. Kirsten Dunst is clearly throwing her all into this as usual. She's stellar. And the situations she's finding herself in are very relatable to me. She's booted off a Broadway musical just because a critic didn't like her performance? Wow, that's a little different. But with this being an arc that hits really close to home for me, especially with the similar situations I've dealt with as a stage actor, I found myself super invested in how layered this was. And oddly enough, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but the relationship between Mary Jane and Peter has felt the most realistic it's ever been throughout the whole trilogy. Okay, hold on, everybody. Now, please, don't hurt my loved ones because they got nothing to do with this. I realize that this means that I think Spider-Man 3 did something better than both of its predecessors, and I understand Mary Jane has to be saved again as a damsel in distress. I understand that Peter is a little bit more of a dickhead, which we'll get to. There is a lot of teasing this romance again, which is dumb. The infamous bridge breakup scene? How did Mary Jane forget that Peter and Spider-Man were the same person? Ugh, that scene was so stupid. But you know what? It all feels very organic and like a very real relationship. I loved Peter's attempts at proposing to Mary Jane being thwarted in the restaurant with Bruce Campbell as the maitre d'. Another hilarious cameo, might I add. But I love the quiet moments, their conversations and trying to make the relationship work. It all feels very organic and real. You know, as opposed to the corny dialogue they shared in the first movie.
You have a knack for saving my life. I think I have a superhero stalker.
Yeah, Spider-Man 3, oddly enough, has none of this. And you know what? Good form. I really respect that. But while we're on the subject of corny, let's talk about Harry Osborn / the new Goblin. Let's face it, this was the arc that I was looking forward to seeing pay off the most between Peter and Harry. And you know what? that fight where we're first introduced to the new Goblin and we see Harry in his uniform for the first time on the glider. You knew this was coming, Pete! Again, that's super fun. You know who else must have really been having fun was James Franco himself. Because it feels like such a self-aware performance, like he knew how silly this all was. And once Harry's knocked on the head a little too hard, he decides to smile that dopey grin the whole way through. It was so fun to watch him. I was laughing hysterically so much. And you know what, guys? As predictable as it was going into the theater as a kid, I was honestly kind of torn up by Harry's death. Yeah, after watching the first two films repeatedly, I could guess pretty easily that Harry was gonna bite the dust in this. But that death scene and that sacrifice I felt was super effective, especially after he chose the light and teamed up with Peter in that final fight scene, which was fantastic. I'm going as far as saying something fantastic happened in Spider-Man 3. All this action is good to great. But as you know, you get not one villain in Harry, not two, but three. Let's go ahead and talk about Flint Marko / the Sandman for a second. He's played in this movie by the perfectly cast Thomas Hayden Church, who did a really good job. And I feel like the casting has always been a strong suit of the Raimi trilogy. Everybody just fits their roles so well. For the most part. And you know what? The Sandman's backstory with his daughter was magnificent. The transformation scene he has was rather haunting. If you go back and watch that transformation scene, check this out. There is no spoken lines of dialogue, but yet director Sam Raimi is able to get across so much with that character in that one little moment. And immediately we can guess that the Sandman is a guy who has lost everything. And it's honestly heartbreaking watching that. It may have just been my favorite scene throughout the entire movie. The one with no lines. Speaks volumes, doesn't it? Less is more, ladies and gentlemen. Because when it was revealed that in fact Flint was Uncle Ben's killer, that character arc just falls down the rabbit hole and it never recovers. Like, for God's sakes, we're going back to this again? This subplot I really didn't think needed to be in this movie. Less is more, like I said. But did we need to acknowledge Uncle Ben again in this? No. Did we need the reminder of the hero's origins again? Absolutely not. For all intents and purposes, this part felt very, very forced. But speaking of forced, let's dive right into the negatives and discuss the reason why Spider-Man 3 was such a colossal disappointment. That's because the producers were begging Sam Raimi to put in various aspects that they were wanting to see. Chief among them being Eddie Brock / Venom, who is played here by Topher Grace, and he's not terrible. Just a strange choice in hindsight. But Venom is clearly not overly developed and very rushed. His involvement in the suit, even though it looks fantastic, we were not given enough of him. And not to mention, he's completely nuked and decimated at the end with the obsession getting to him. So let me get this straight. Sony was begging Sam Raimi to include Venom, only to kill him off? As the nostalgia critic would say, what the flying spider balls indeed. They really could have waited until a fourth Raimi film, and they blew their load with this character way too freaking early. Hell, why not just wait to make a solo movie for Venom, because this is a very interesting arc in its own right. You know, preferably in a movie that's not shitty and that's rated R. Pretty please? No, is that too much to ask? Speaking of shoehorning, how about the inclusion of Gwen Stacy, played by Bryce Dallas Howard? This is another character the producers were begging Sam Raimi to include, and Howard herself doesn't do too bad in the film. But again, just like Eddie Brock, who she's dating in this, she's really rushed. She just feels like a plot device to drive a wedge between Peter and Mary Jane. And I'm like, for crying out loud, I've seen a wedge between them twice now. It legitimately feels just like the astronaut from Spider-Man 2 in reverse. And it's Gwen Stacy, a very important character from the comics, and oh, God. Oh, I need to calm down, guys. But yeah, let me just address Tobey Maguire real quick, because I have praised his performance and his work in the past two films. He really does have a lot of facepalm-worthy moments in this. Peter Parker's written to be a douche. I'm mainly thinking of him hitting that weird emo phase where his hair is brushed over his forehead and whatnot. He's hitting on Elizabeth Banks. You know, the stupid dance number with Gwen in the club where MJ is working. And, of course, this. Everybody's already made fun of that moment, even Into the Spider-Verse in the first couple of minutes, and I was busting up laughing at that moment. So I really don't think I need to delve any deeper into how stupid this was, but let me just close by pointing this out. Look at this poster real quick. When I was 10 years old and I was walking through my local theater and I saw this poster up on the wall, I was like, oh yeah. And we get glimpses of what a dark story like the poster indicated would do. The underground train scene between Peter and Flint, awesome, freaking brutal, and the CGI is much improved since 2002. Flint's face being flattened by a moving train is just nauseating. But long story short, I really did not get the movie that I was really wanting to see as a young kid. And yeah, there are parts of this movie that I utterly despise, but damn it, there's just other parts of this film, like the action, like the direction, like Mary Jane Watson as a character. It's just all too good for me. This is nowhere close to the worst superhero movie of all time. It's way better than Batman and Robin, way better than Superman 4, but as I've mentioned, super disappointing. I'm gonna give Spider-Man 3 a C. What else is there really to say, guys? You all know how much of a letdown this was. And the lack of interest in seeing any more from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man universe meant this was the end of his trilogy. Out with the old, in with the new, especially because a year after Spider-Man 3, The Dark Knight hit theaters, and that's still the best superhero movie ever made in my opinion, so everybody was trying to reach that level of greatness. Enter Sony's equivalent to that. Shit. Stay tuned for the next review. But until then, let me know what you thought of Spider-Man 3 down in the comments section below. What do you guys think is the best Sam Raimi Spider-Man moment? And on the opposite side of the spectrum, what do you think is the dumbest moment out of all the Raimi films? As you guys know, I love discussing all new things cinema and entertainment with you guys. I love discussing everything Marvel. And guys, seeing your feedback down in the comments and interacting with you really does make my day. You know what else would really make my day is if you smash that subscribe button down below as hard as you possibly can. This channel is on the road to 1,000 subscribers, which is a number I'm hoping to reach very, very soon. So subscribing is not only beneficial to me, it's beneficial to all of you guys. You guys will be in the know of whenever a new video hits this channel. You guys will be the first ones on the list. Don't forget, smash that thumbs up button on your way out. This really helps get this content out to more people. And as always, stay tuned for more exciting content hitting this channel very, very soon, including my review for the aforementioned Amazing Spider-Man, which is not so amazing. I'm also super excited to announce that I'm a little bit late on capping off this 25th anniversary, but I can't wait to talk about The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which in my opinion is one of the most underrated Disney animated films out there. So clearly a lot of exciting things to look forward to and much, much more. Y'all are the best. I really could not thank you enough for your support up to this stage. And with all that being said, back talk, commence.